Eicha begins with a pasuk. The city was so full of people, and it sits now alone, desolate. It was Rabbosi Bagoyim, Sorosi Bamadinos. And it was the princess of all the nations. Oisolamas. How did such a thing happen? Now, I'm troubled by the fact that at the time that the Churban happened, by Esrishain, Yerushalayim was no longer the Sarosi Bamdinos. It had already descended very much from its position that it held in the days of Shlomo HaMelech, where it was the metropolis of the whole world. The split between Yehuda and Yisrael had a tremendous effect. The Averis had led to Churbanos after Churban, and attacks after attack. The treasury of the Beis Hamikdash had been looted much earlier. The city was really in a terrible shape. It wasn't Sarosi Bamadinos. In fact, Bavel was a Sarosi Bamadinos. Bavel was considered one of the most wondrous cities in the world, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Nebuchadnezzar had built. It had hanging gardens, whatever that was. That was a wonder. It had waters and rivers that were just very lush, made a lush city out of it. It was unbelievably beautifully decorated. It was, before they conquered Yerushalayim, they already were the capital of a great empire, conquered by Rishis, but nevertheless conquered. So what does it mean over here when it says, Sarosi Bamadinos? First pasuk. Now today, I spoke about the word Eicha. Eicha. I said the word is really Eich, but Eicha is reserved to express mourning. Mourning. But why is the word Eich chosen as the shirish of the word for mourning? Because mourning contains a tremendous shock. My experience has been when somebody passes away, and the family has been expecting it for a while. The person's in the hospital and all kinds of medical help, and the person dies. The family is still shocked. No strange thing occurs that it's a shock. How can it be a shock? It's hard to believe reality. When reality suddenly intrudes into the world that we live, somehow we live with such a cholem, such illusions, that when the reality intrudes, it's a shock. I remember, it's not the same thing exactly at all. I remember coming back from Vaya in New York on a winter day, the whole yeshiva practically gone, which was then two buses. And there was, the highway was not the same highways that we have today, and it was very tight, packed on both sides. They had plowed it, and the middle was open, but the sides were piled high with snow. I remember saw a truck trying to get out over the pile of snow to make a delivery or something, and the bus was hurtling along, not noticing, it seems, the bus I was on. And I saw it was going to crash. I put up my knee against the seat in front of me. It was very clear from the big windows in the front it was going to crash, and it crashed. Remember the shock of the crash when the corner of the truck came through the window. I saw it happening. But when I saw it come through the window with the glass shattering, it was such a shock. So if the window, and the thing is an illusion, that no matter how much our mind tells us and our chush tells us of what the reality really is, but it's an illusion. It was always that way. When Jews were being rounded up, and they knew about the roundups, and tried to get out of the European countries, whatever it was, and they're late in the war, and they were shocked. It means it really happens. So therefore, Eicha contains shock, together with the word for mourning. The special use of the word Eicha that's used for mourning. We find Eicha in the Torah also. We have in today's Kriya. In the Kriya it says, how can I carry Torachem Maskam Berivchem? How can I? It's a sense of, there's a word of mourning there, Eicha. Mourning for your Masachem Berivchem. Mourning for the fact that Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, where they were penniless. And they became very wealthy, Bizas Hayom, Yitzias Mitzrayim. And then they had to, Moshe sat there to be done, dinim for them, and finally he appointed the officers over them. What was going on that they had to stand all day? They came over, they would come yet with a shiur, with a teppel, with a spoon, there'd be milk, some flashes. What was he standing? What was he paskening over? He was paskening dinim ominous. They just got rich. Penniless before, and they just got rich. It's Maska, Masechon, Rivchem. They were fighting. It was a shock. How could it be? And Moshe Rabbeinu frequently expresses shock in the Midbar. How is it possible? You don't believe in the Rebbeinu Shalom? You don't see what he did? How is it possible? Moshe Rabbeinu was the Avi Anavi. And yet he also seems to have been shocked by what he saw by Klal Yisrael. How could it be? There's another place where it expresses shock in Torah. Torah says, the people that were rooted out and destroyed by the Kibush Haaretz. So Yidden will ask, how did they serve their gods? I want to do so also. Isn't that insane? You feel the God protects you. Don't you feel your own God protects you? Their God's protected them. What are you going to want to search for? That's a king of money. How sad, how shocking. There's another place where there's Eicha in the Torah, but it's well hidden. In the Olam Rishon, he's from the Esadas. Then he hears the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't jump on him, but he makes a sound of feet walking in the Gan. Of course, the feet that are walking don't sound like human feet. They sound probably large pounding, as you would imagine a Rebbeinu Shalom's Kavayochel feet would be walking in the garden. Misalech. And he hides. Serchet Zagon. And the Rebbeinu Shalom calls out to him, Ayeko, where are you? The Medrash Rabbah says over there, Ayeko Oisios Eicha. It's written, the word Eicha is written there. It could have been written again, Ayeko, with a long chaf at the end. It was written Eicha. I wouldn't say the Rebbeinu Shalom is shocked, but he speaks in terms of shock. Where are you? What's happened to you? How did this happen? A divine creature, so special with Tzelem Elokim. Tzelem Elokim is before Chet. After Chet, a person loses zt'l Elokim. But zt'l Elokim mamish. In the Medrash, the Malach HaShor want to say shiur to you. Mirad Oretz HaShamayim. What happened? Not because the Baruch Shalom is shocked, but he expresses the shock to Adam. So the Adam should hear it's shocking what you've done to yourself. Be shocked. Eicha, where are you now? Be shocked. This is the be shocked. The Eicha, it may well be the Eicha of the first pasuk of Megillah Eicha tonight. When it says Shirasi B'Medinais, it doesn't mean that at the time of the Churban was Shirasi B'Medinais, because it wasn't. But it means it had been at one time Shirasi B'Medinais. Under David and Shlomo it had been Taka Shirasi B'Medinais. There was no Bavel. There was nothing else. Not because it hadn't done yet. It didn't deserve to be yet. And Klal Yisrael was Shirasi B'Medinais. Yerushalayim was Shirasi B'Medinais. And the whole world flowed to Yerushalayim. Malchus Shvua, the queen of Sheba, came to see what it was. Where is Sheba? I have no idea. It's mashma. It's in Africa, a certain place in mashma. And she came and she traveled to see it. And she said, what I've seen is only a mixas. What I've heard is only a mixas of what I've seen. And she didn't come to Stam in the Veldrein, but she heard Waldi Kazacha. Which is a mixus of what it is. The reality of Chacham Shlomo, the reality of his whole court and the whole beauty of it. The beauty of Malchus Yisrael. So no, I think that when the Navi says that she was the Sarasi Bamdinois, it means she should have been the Sarasi Bamdinois, and she had Taka been at one time. Look what's happened. Look at the end. Look at the Mapola, the Yoshua Bodod. Look at the sad ending of the Sarasi Bamdinois. But there's more to it than just the sad ending of the Yerushalayim. Shlomo Melech built this Beis Hamikdash, which we mourn. He built it with a draft of labor. David HaMelech had prepared oitzrois, treasures, to use in Beis Hamikdash, and Shlomo Melech did not use them as Mefurish in Tanakh. He used his own. He did not volunteer like they did in the Mishkan Kol Chachmei Lev to come and do. He drafted them. What was the reason that the Beis Hamikdash was built? This Beis Hamikdash, what we mourn, was built by Shlomo HaMelech with a draft. Don't you think that the people would have volunteered? They would call for volunteers, come and chop stones and bring wood and whatever, all the things that were necessary. People would have volunteered, perhaps. What was it a draft? And why didn't he use the oitzros of David HaMelech, who so conscientiously stored up oitzros for the future Beis Hamikdash, and he didn't use them? He put them into the treasury, but he didn't use them in the binyan. What was the reason not? I would venture to say that Shlomo Melech knew that this Beis Hamikdash that was being built was part of his malchus. His malchus was malchus Shemayim. There's one human being in the world whose name is shared by the Bari Olam. That's Shlomo. Kol Shlomo Shabbat Shirim is Kodesh. How could it be? Why is Shlomo the same name? The Bereshim shares that name. Shlomo was meant to be. And the Beis Hamikdash was meant to be. It was Shlomo who built it. And it was supposed to be the Beis Hamikdash for the whole world. It was supposed to be the Gula. It was supposed to be Mashiach. It was supposed to be all over. And it had to be done by Shlomo himself. Because Shlomo himself represented the Malchus Shemayim Ba'aretz. And that's why he was a Marshal with all his power and glory, because he represented the Malchus Shemayim Ba'aretz. He was a Baruch Hashem's Melech. He wasn't just a Melech with the Baruch Hashem's Rishus. The Baruch Hashem ruled through him. This is what the Beis Hamikdash was supposed to be. It was supposed to be the source of light for the world, and the source of light of Klal Yisrael as well, of course. And through this source of light and cure to the Bnei Shalom, it was meant to be, ideally, it was meant to be the Geula that we're waiting for 2,500 years. It was it. It was done. There was no Mashiach. There was no anything. It was it. It was Mashiach. It was done. And as things deteriorated, Shlomo HaMelech himself, and besides Shlomo, the kings after him, and the split and the Malchus and everything as recorded painfully in Sefer Malachim, down to the Churban. But as long as things stood, as long as the building stood, as long as the Avodah went on, there was always a possibility of resuscitation. The right king will come along from Malchus Beis David, and it's just like there were other kings that got rid of some of their idols, he got rid of some of their Asherahs, he got rid of the Baal, and various other abominations. So will come a king who picked the whole thing up. Who picked the whole thing up. It's here. It's there. It's not empty. There's still Shirayim. The dead man is still breathing. You never know what can happen. He can be resuscitated. Don't give up. So the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash is a shocking end to the possibility of us, frankly, ruling the world. Not in a selfish way, not in a self-centered way, not for our own benefit, but for the Bnei Shalom. Being his ministers, being his teachers, being the ones that all of humanity would find it to be a schus to touch a real Jew, to see his tzitzis, to grab onto his tzitzis and say, "Let me be your Eved." Out west, believe it or not, in those religious areas out west, it's still possible. And you sometimes come across it to bump into a goy who is so touched by bumping into a Jew. Are you a real Jew? Like you know from the Bible that they study all the time. A real Jew, not New York area. But there are in the center of the country, there are such people. I've met people have tremendous derech eretz for you as a Jew. You really are a Jew, like you know. There really is such a thing as Jews, not just in the book. There really are, and this really is one. Wow. Imagine if the Shekhinah ruled the world. Imagine what it would mean to be a Yid. So the Eicha, among all the things that happened, and all the things that transpired, and the things that transpired that we mentioned and all the kinnis, what should I say? I wouldn't say they're minor compared to the Holocaust, but maybe they are. It's very hard to believe the Holocaust. It's really hard to believe it. I know it's true, no question, but it's hard. It's shocking. It's hard to believe what Yidden went through. It's hard to believe any of us survived. It's hard to believe in the miracle that has occurred afterwards, that Yidden still remain frum. They're still a frum community, and we're building yeshivas and building knisiyos, and haven't walked away from the whole thing. There are those Yechidim who did. It's hard to believe it. This whole thing is just too much. It's hard to believe. I don't want to tell you Holocaust stories, but there are stories of heroics, of course. Heroics. And stories of, what should I tell you? I remember reading about a little child named Mendel. His father was dark-haired. His mother was a blonde. And Mendel looked like his father. And the father had gotten out of where they were, and he had a Goyish friend, a neighbor, and he asked him to get his wife out past the German checkpoint. And he was gone, and the wife was a blonde, and she didn't look Jewish. But the little child, Mendel, looked Jewish. Dark eyes, dark hair. I picture him with a little peelach next to his ears. So the guy took a wagon, and he put Mendel inside in the wagon, and he covered him with straw. And he sat up on the front with the wife, and obviously she looked like his wife. And the mother said to the child, she said, Mendel, no matter what happens, you must not make a sound, Mendel. Not a single sound. You understand, Mendel? He was 7 years old. He said, yeah, Ma, I understand no matter what. Don't make any sound, not a single sound. They piled hay on top of him, and he went through the checkpoint. The German at the checkpoint said, what do you got in the wagon? He said, hay, you see it's hay. He took his bayonet, and he stabbed it through the hay a few times. And they drove on. When they were out of range of the guy, or the German, they pulled aside the straw, and Mendel had been stabbed. And he didn't make a sound. He said, Mommy, I didn't make a sound. Yeah. How many little children were like that? Children that broke through the walls of the ghetto to scrounge food for their parents in the ghetto. The starvation. The unbelievable courage to remain a Yid during that and after that. It says that in the Eicha we say, you had no Rachmanis. And you can certainly say about the Holocaust, there was no Rachmanis. But the shock of all this, and of course resurgence again in anti-Semitism now, the shock of it. It's a shock. And this what's going on now, and everything that took place, is all one seamless connection back to the fact that the Malchus Shemayim did not have a kiyum on the world, and that his representatives do not represent him, didn't and don't. And that's the automatic result of it. That's the result of it. It's just one long story of not getting ourselves together and going back, which we don't know how to do. Now there has been a turn in Hashgacha for Klal Yisrael. There's been a turn. There's been a turn in Hashgacha for Klal Yisrael. People have said to me, how can I say this on Tisha B'av? It's not true. How can I say that? It's not true. I said to people, don't say it if you don't think it's true, don't say it. There's been a turn. It hasn't come yet, Ron Sham's people. We haven't come back yet. Neither the Friar nor the Fleur. We haven't had you come back. But it's a turn. And the Navi tells us that he will indeed bring us back. It says he will bring us back, and it says, and he will be matayher us over there. So we will not have the koyach to do that. We don't. We're not getting any better. We did do a wonderful thing that we stuck with Yiddishkeit, but we haven't gotten better. A very clever Hasidic Yid said to me, we've rebuilt what there was in Europe with all its chesroinus. Very true. With all its chesroinus. But he says he'll bring us back. And there he'll bring us back, and there he'll pour out on us Mayim Tahirim, it'll be Matayras. And it'll take Leiv Evan Mikirbeinu, he says, and it'll put in Leiv Basar. And that seems to be taking place now. That's beginning. And we have the schus of seeing it. And it should be very encouraging for us to see this. You notice that in Eicha, in the 3rd chapter, there's suddenly a flash of light. Chaz Hashem ki l'sonu. This I put in my heart, al ken ochil, and therefore I hope. Chaz Hashem ki l'sonu ki l'chol rechamo. Chadoshim lab korim, rabbi munasecha. Every morning we wake up again from a night, and the day starts again for us, and we're renewed and renewed. That's a siman that there's renewal in the world. That's a siman that's renewed. A person works all day, especially in the old days, works so hard, and goes and falls asleep, and wakes in the morning refreshed, and a new person. And he makes Birchas HaShachar again. He's once again grateful for who he is and what he is and what it means to be a Yid. There's a Tchias HaMesim, so to speak, on him every morning. So since the world was created that way, Chadoshim Labkorim, every morning is a newness. So that itself is a raya that there'll be newness for us as a nation. Newness for us as a people. And we've been zoiche to see the beginning of that newness. The very beginning. And of course, it has to lead to where it's supposed to go. Which is once again, the Baruch Hashem HaMelech HaKol Haaretz, including us, of course. That's where it has to go. And it's going slowly. We'd like to see it a little faster, but it's going slowly. It is moving in that direction. There are positive signs. And naturally, it goes a couple of steps forward and falls back a couple of steps. And I wish the leadership was a little more b'chavadik all over the world, in the United States and in Israel. A lot of things that we wish were different. But there are steps forward. You know the steps back. And the steps forward come because we have remained Yidden, and we shall remain Yidden, and we trained our children to be Yidden, and they will remain Yidden. And because we mourn the Ovar, we mourn the Churban of Klal Yisrael, but we still mourn the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash. At least in our exterior actions, if our heart doesn't have a connection to it. But we're sitting here on the ground. It's for the Churban Beis Hamikdash, primarily. And the Churban Beis Hamikdash, as I said before, is the Churban of the Baruch Shalom's house. The second Beis Hamikdash was not this, but the first was. It wasn't this that the first was. It didn't have the Orna Kodesh, and it wasn't just because it didn't have the Orna Kodesh. It did not have, it was already late. It didn't have that a possibility, that Malchus, that everything that it should be. Malchus Hashem Boris. It did not have that, the second one. But we mourn the first one, and the second one, and the Yidden that died in between and afterwards, and the suffering in our nation. We mourn that all. And that mourning itself, we're told in Chazal, we're told in Sukkim, that those who mourn will be zeicher to see. And that's a nice thing to know. The Tisha B'av, and our observance of Tisha B'av is Gorim the Geula, is one of the Gorim of the Geula. There's an old Messiah, Mashiach is born on Tisha B'av. I don't know if he actually has to be born, but It conveys a lesson that the Geula is born on Tisha B'av. It's hard to understand why so much has happened to us. And those who can't bear it are recommended to sit down with a Sefer Malachim, in English if necessary, and see if you knock it off, that you can appreciate afterwards how wrong we were. How wrong we were. And what this kas was. What this anger is all about. What this anger is all about. I heard a Marvadik Vort, B'Shem Rabbi Yechiel Perr Soloveitchik from Boston. That Tisha B'av gets lighter in the afternoon, tomorrow afternoon will get lighter. Put on film finally, davening, sit on chairs. So why is Tisha B'av lighter in the afternoon? He said, because Leiser V'tzisa B'Esa'ar. They burnt the Beis Hamikdash on the day. Then they saw the fire going up and they saw the Beis Hamikdash going to be burnt. So Yidden realized that they would not be destroyed. Beis Hamikdash will be in its place. Why did Jews understand they should be destroyed?